Right, I think I'm live, so hello. I'll wait just a minute to see if anybody wants to join. I know with the time differences here in the States where I am, it's about 8 o'clock, so I know overseas it's quite a bit later, actually. For those of you who are going to watch it recorded, still feel free to comment your questions and everything, because I'm happy to answer them. And hopefully we'll have some live visitors as well, and if not, I'll just kind of go over some of the things that I want to talk about with reactivity. But again, I'll just wait an extra minute to see who wants to join us, and we'll go from there. So give me just a minute. I'll pull up my notes, and we'll get started here. Right. Oh, hello. Hi, everybody. For those of you joining, doing this from my phone. It's a little bit easier, I think. Let me see here. See who can hear me better, maybe, if I get my speaker attached here. Give me 1 second, guys. Do this real quick here. Sorry, you're gonna get to see my ceiling. You can hear me. All right. I'm gonna try with the speaker with my headset on, see if that's any better. Can everybody hear me and see me okay? Just maybe give a thumbs up or a comment if you can. I just want to make sure everything's going well that way. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Basically, welcome. This is the talk on reactivity and the explosive dog. Kind of want to discuss the differences between some people thinking their dogs are unhinged, and coming apart and being stubborn and things like that. Or I like to kind of prefer them as a little bit more misunderstood. All right, awesome. Thank you for the thumbs up. Good that you guys can hear me. So I'm still newer to the talk, so bear with me as I go through this, but my name is Julie Westphal. I'm actually a licensed veterinary technician. I am certified Fear Level 3 Elite Professional for Fear Free Professional, and I'm a proud member of Pet Professional Guild. I'm also a member of the IAABC. I have a few other credentials in nutrition, as well as Reiki and energy work and things like that. So I like to bring the whole picture when I do my consults. I like to look at the whole picture when I'm doing things, and that's a little bit more of going to be my focus tonight on this talk as well. So basically, as we get started, I have a lot of other talks that'll fill in some of the blanks. And so in the description of this talk are all of the links as well as the actual talks I'm giving or I have given already. So when I talk about nutrition and the whole picture and things like that, you can actually look at some of the other talks. They are all little puzzle pieces to this as well. But I will address the main things that I kind of can go over. I also want to encourage anybody who has questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section. Type in your questions. I will try to implement them in there as well. I have kind of an outline I'll go over, but I'm always happy to answer questions. If I can't get to them on the talk, I'll talk to you personally, or we'll answer them in another talk in the future, things like that, okay? So kind of without further ado, we'll get started. But basically, again, the reactivity and the explosive dog, is your dog actually acting unhinged, or is your dog actually more misunderstood? And so a lot of things when I talk to students or when I'm consulting and going over things is I want to actually address the whole picture. And by looking at that whole picture, I also want to start off by addressing, basically what behavior is and kind of talking about what's called the behavioral triangle. In the behavioral triangle, we kind of look at thoughts that create the behavior that then create emotions that then either reinforce the initial thought or extinguish the initial thought, or basically have that attachment to it. And what we forget sometimes in behavior is that it's not always about the mechanics. So it's not always about the leashes, the collars, and rewarding and all those good things that are there. They absolutely play a part, but sometimes it's really about the emotional state of the dog. And that's ultimately in the reactive dog what we're going to be modifying the most, in addition to teaching some of those foundational habits that we really do need in order to get the dog out of a reactivity episode or just instantly responding to something because they have learned that it's, that's a habit to something that they can do. So we'll talk about that as well. But in the whole picture, I always like to kind of address kind of the human example of, like with the behavioral triangle, like for instance, the dog kind of sees that person with the hat and they go, I really don't think I like that person with the hat. So I'm going to bark at that person wearing the hat. And therefore I'm barking at that person and I'm making myself feel better. And that person goes away. So therefore it worked. It made me feel uncomfortable. I barked at it. They went away. So next time I'm going to bark more ferociously and faster and react a lot quicker because it works. And so if we break it down, I don't want to say it's so simplistic to break it down to this, but ultimately realize that your dog does what works. And what works simply means usually what makes them feel better or what gets the end result that makes them feel better. So when you have an explosive type dog, we really want to set them up for success by looking at the whole picture, breaking it down into steps, getting them to be more successful, getting some good foundation, changing the emotional state behind the dog, and then being able to add those distractions back in, like the people with the hats. So as we go about, again, if you have specific questions or case examples that, I can somewhat kind of help answer, I'd be happy to. So just comment on them. But otherwise, again, I'm going to try to break it down into little pieces for you. With the basic premise of dogs doing what works to make them feel better, those actions and those feelings behind it are ultimately what we want to change. And so hopefully, as we do some programs for reactivity and getting them to not necessarily think they have to explode and react and do those things to get those things to go away, in essence, we want to do what's called desensitize and counter condition them to those things, to where we can even start with a hat on the ground. We can start with a person, next to a hat at a far enough distance. I'm not going to go into the breakdown of mechanics, but in order to ultimately do that, because we want the final example to be, I see a person with a hat. Ooh, that person with a hat actually means that chicken's coming. It's going to rain from the sky if I just look at it and I don't bark at it. Or, hey, I can go ask my mom, what do you want me to do? And I get chicken coming from the sky when I don't look at it, when I don't bark at it. So some of those things we're going to talk about, and when I teach foundational cues, or what foundational cues I kind of want from the dog, but being able to actually get the dog to understand some foundation, but then change the emotional state of anticipatory of, I want that thing to happen. So that the end result is, look at that person in the hat, Mom. That person in the hat's coming this way. Do I get chicken for this? Or do I get to play ball for this? Can I use the flirt pole? Can we go ahead and, can we go away? Because I'd rather do a safari, whatever is rewarding to the dog, so that they start to say, I want that person with that hat to come here. I want them to come close. I want them to be around, because the greatest things happen when that person is around, or when that hat is around. And so that's, again, where we talk about changing the emotional state, because then you don't get an explosive dog. You don't get a dog that's reactionary. You get a dog that's going, ooh, I know this one. Hey, can I get something good for this? And it's, basically creating a different emotional response to something. The human example would probably be like, if you don't like spiders, if I put a tarantula in front of you at 30 feet away, you'd probably, even if you hated spiders or were phobic of spiders, there's certain behaviors you might be able to do besides running away. That we could also say, hey, I'll give you $100 if you can stand 30 feet away. Okay, I'll give you $1,000 if you can stand 10 feet away. I'll give you $1 million if I can put this tarantula on your hand. And some people would still say $1 million isn't worth it, but a lot of people would be like, okay, how long does it have to be on my hand? And what do I have to do to work with this? So even if the dog sees something very fearful, we want to do a slow process so that they actually go, okay, I can handle this. I can deal with this. I know what to expect. And I know that really good things are going to happen if I can get through this. And so that's where we start to see that the reactions towards dogs, the reactions towards people, or the reactions towards noises and stuff, can actually calm down. We don't get that explosive dog anymore. So using behavior modification with fear-free or non-aversive techniques is actually going to be a lot faster in many ways. It's going to be still a process, but it's not going to create any bad emotional attachment that sometimes the aversive training sometimes does. If we focus too much on correcting the dog, and this is kind of where I try to explain it to students, and and other professionals watching this kind of know this, but I try to explain it to people that if you're only focusing on correcting the dog, you're still not teaching them what they should be doing. And in actuality too, you're teaching them that they still can't trust you, because you're either creating pain or more fear, because they're already showing you that they're nervous about something. So ultimately, in my behavior modification programs, I want to validate the dog. I want to actually say, you know what? I see that you're scared of that. I see that you're nervous with that. I see that you really don't like that. Okay, that's fine, but let me see if I can change how you feel about this thing, or this person, or this dog. And so there is a plan of action to actually start with distance being our friend, being able to work at slowly counter-conditioning them to these things, but then build up so that there's at least tolerance, if not total enjoyment. I've gotten dogs to be able to tolerate things that they never would have tolerated before, and at least do that, but I've also gotten dogs to then go from being dog aggressive and dog reactive to actually enjoying dog play with certain animals. So I'm not going going to say it's a, hey, that dog's great with 1,000 dogs, but now that dog can actually enjoy play. So some of those things, can be goals. We just also want to look at the dog in front of us as an individual, and we want to actually pinpoint a few things with that dog first. The very first thing that I do when I look at the explosive type dog is I always want to rule out medical. So I'm going to go over these boring little things maybe first, but some things that I feel are often missed when we do consultations. And ruling out medical concerns, is this actually a progressive concern? Is this actually a acute, it happened right away? Is this something that's been going on and been stable the whole time and it truly is behavioral? By doing a really thorough physical exam, and again, if the dog is reactionary at the vet, then maybe we do sedatives and we talk about fear-free cooperative visits. I have a whole talk on cooperative care that I did. We can do something to set the dog up for success, but I really want a vet to be involved to say, and basically clear the dog medically to say, yeah, we truly believe this is a behavioral concern, not a physical concern. What is the age of the dog? So many times we'll see progressive aggression like after age 6 or 7, and it's due to arthritic concerns. So it's not truly, there are behavior changes, but it's not like a behavioral change that actually we can't modify with something physical. You cannot fight a physical concern with a behavioral solution. You just can't. So I want to rule out physical first. I want to get the medical, aspect taken care of so that the vet says, nope, there's nothing physically wrong with the dog. There's no arthritis. There's no pain. There's not a slipped disc. There's not a strained muscle. There's not an abscessed tooth. Sometimes when dogs get reactionary, they want to growl, and that growl, that vibration, I've seen it in some of the consults where they've had bad teeth, and we did the dental, we did the abscessed tooth, and they weren't actually as agitated anymore. I'm not saying it's a miracle cure, because there are some things that are going on, but really look at the physicality behind what's going on to see if there's a medical concern. If a thorough exam and lab work and everything is good, then we can go move on. Then we've ruled out that puzzle piece as a problem and, again, made sure that we don't have to address a physical concern as well. And especially age-related aggression. So if we suddenly see more age-related aggression, the senior dogs, that's when I look at arthritis concerns and have the vet, help rule out some of those things too. I also address nutrition and diet because I want to make sure as much as, if we're not getting enough food or if we're not getting enough calorie intake, or if we're getting too much, etc., there's reverse of everything, then we want to address that as well. So, the joking term is hangry. Yes, if dogs aren't getting the right protein carb ratios, if they're not getting the nutrition they need, or if they're not getting it on a more routinistic schedule sometimes, they can actually have some behavioral concerns, because of that. They can be more irritable at certain times. The benefit of having meal times and even doing enrichment meal times versus just dish feeding meal times is that you get a dog that anticipates a certain time frame that they know when their meal is coming. And some households are very, free feed, whatever. I'd rather have a meal time so I can work around it with training and I can actually do enrichments, so scatter feedings and tricky treat balls and puzzle toys and things like that, because then I can wear them out and really engage their brain at the same time, especially with a busy schedule. That talk is tomorrow, enrichment solutions for the busy owner. So some of those things I'll address during that talk. But again, look at your diet and nutrition. Sometimes we also want to add supplements. Again, if there's pain related or other things going on, lab work shows liver kidney enzymes are off. There are other supplements that we can address to make sure that whole picture is being met and that some of these reaction or this aggression isn't occurring because of a medical concern. As far as even assessing the dog, what medications are they on? So always get a full thorough history when, especially if you're a professional dealing with this, or know what medications your dog is on so that you don't start something supplemental. Google can be a wonderful thing, but it also can really, really injure or hurt your dog or cause toxicities. As a licensed technician, I really want to make sure that you're not using melatonin, say with something, or Benadryl with Dramamine and all those different things that can act as sedatives that can calm down a dog, that you're getting your information from a reliable source and not going to create a toxicity or overly sedate your dog that can cause major issues, like actually emergency situation issues. So know what your pet is on medically, even for preventatives, and work with your vet on some of these supplements that are out there. If you find one that you really like, Google search is showing you something, great, but talk to your vet about making sure it's okay to start. Jay, that's what I'm working on, ruling out medical issues. Absolutely. Rule out medical issues absolutely first. Good. Very good. Good plan. And then, so after we address some of the nutrition and some of the supplements and things like that, if we're going to use prescription medications in conjunction with behavior modification, that is what I want to stress is to student or professional or otherwise. it has to be stressed as medication, prescription especially, supplemental especially. Those are supposed to be used in conjunction with behavior modification. Giving medication alone, a lot of people do just say, it doesn't work. You're right. It doesn't work. It's not going to. It's supposed to take them below threshold so that they can learn new things. If we've never taught them new things, they can't be expected to be working on medications either. So we might get a sedative effect. We might get a dog that's a little calmer or sleeping all the time. And that's usually what I hear is, oh, my dog is sleeping all the time. Or, well, then we need to adjust the medication. So that's where the veterinarians come in to really help with dosaging or working with that as well. So, if you're going to start supplements or medication, totally fine. I would rather have your dog medicated and then be able to learn and then behavior modify. I have countless cases where I've gotten the dogs off of Prozac. They don't necessarily need it lifelong, but if it helps them learn to then behavior modify, to then be successful, and then we can wean them off or get them at least on lowest dose necessary if they do need it, because some dogs do it, then we can do that. But definitely don't just go, it's the last resort. Actually, it could be one of the first one or two things. If we started some behavior modification that's not working in a couple of weeks, and I say be consistent for a couple of weeks, then we might want to actually start looking at that. Because I don't want a dog being stressed out for 10, 12 weeks, and then we look at medication, and 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, when it starts to stabilize in the bloodstream, the dog's doing perfectly. Behavior modification's working, we're getting progress. Well, then that's a couple months that we wasted, and not necessarily wasted. We live and learn. I'm not blaming anybody, but I'd rather jump into medications after a couple of weeks than have to worry about it, after a couple months. Michaela, how do you feel about over-the-counter calming treats and chews, such as hemp products, etc.? Do you feel as though people fall back on these as an easy out rather than addressing the issue at large? I think I might have alluded to it. So yes, I do agree with over-the-counter calming chews as a possibility. I'm a fan, to be honest. I'm a fan of working with vets, of course. Again, ruling out history. Again, I think I've alluded to it. And behavior modification. So medications or supplements alone are generally not going to work because they're not in conjunction with behavior modification. They're not going to work by themselves. In conjunction with professional behavior modification, I do believe that they can really help. And as far as like hemp products, I've seen 50-50 with some of the hemp products that are out there. It either works or it doesn't kind of thing. I'm a big fan of Soliquin. I do like over-the-counter Soliquin as a low-anxiety supplement. I'm also a fan of Composure Pro by VetraScience. Those Pro chews are working well with some of my cases. And then I also am a fan of Fortiflora Calming Care. When we talk, and it's actually on my thing to talk about, when we actually look at nutrition and supplements for some of these dogs that have even this aggression or reactivity, most of the time it's because of anxiety or confidence issues. So most of the time, if we help lower some of their anxiety, we actually can help them learn a little bit more appropriately too. There's a whole other bunch of things that we can do, but when we look at even just some of the things that we can do over the counter, like Michaela was saying, I'm a big fan of Fortiflora Calming Care. It's a probiotic that has actually a calming care product in it as well, that, if we give it and we regulate the gut, again, giving them enough gut flora that actually can absorb the nutrition appropriately. I look at cases on a one-by-one basis, but I also look at medical history. Again, I'm a licensed tech. It's in the back of my head. But being able to actually regulate gut after antibiotics. It's so common, unfortunately, that after antibiotics, we don't always do probiotics back. Sometimes we don't need to, and I'm not going to say it's always necessary, knock on wood, right? But I am a big fan of probiotics because you can't, that bacteria is good. We want to get a normal flora system in the gut and help regulate everything. Everything starts in the gut. So nutrition, absorption, etc. So being able to do that, I like it because with especially low-level anxiety dogs, that calming care product has been pretty helpful, at least a little bit. Again, helping get that edge off. Soliquin's another one. Composure Pro's another one. Hemp, I see a 50-50. I don't have any particular product. I always say, talk to your vet about it and the legalities behind some things. I think it's, you do have to watch, certain states and countries where you can get that. So, definitely look at those solutions as part of your nutrition and your supplement, but it has to be in conjunction with behavior modification. I have yet to find a product that is a magic wand that goes, boom, I gave this dog this product and behavior was fixed. It's always going to be, it's not working, or it's too much, or, okay, well then let's start behavior modification. Look, it works. And now as we get habit formed and we get this dog to be calmer, we get this dog to be non-reactionary, now we can go ahead and wean them off of it as well, or get to, again, lowest dose necessary if there is a reason for it. Just like people, some people need medication. and it's fine. Then we do lowest dose necessary and we help the dog. I think that's also missed in a lot of reactionary dogs, again, where I wanted to say, are they unhinged, like some people say, or are they simply misunderstood? Some of these dogs just don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with some of these things. So if we start to understand them, then we get to actually start the behavior, just like in people. You can be as reactionary as you want, but if you start to understand where a person's coming from and why they're coming from there, usually you're a little bit more concerned about, okay, how can we make this a little bit easier? Not always. We're all human. We have our moments, but usually if we start to seek to understand, we get to actually get answers and solutions pretty quickly. The other kind of quick thing I address when I talk to people is also sleep patterns, kind of diving in, right after nutrition. Are they sleeping well enough? Most dogs sleep 12 to 14 hours a day. Giant breeds, puppies can sleep longer. It doesn't mean that, they still nap and things like that in between sometimes too. But if they're not falling into a deep sleep overnight, and most people don't realize if their pets are deep sleepers, if you have a reactive dog, chances are good they're hyper vigilant and they're picking up, especially dogs that are noise sensitive or pick up on those things. Usually the reactive type dogs are like, what is that? What is that? What was that? So even in a dead sleep, they could be waking up going, a squirrel just ran across the roof. Or, someone just left at 3 a.m. in the morning. They do pick up on the environment. Even if you don't wake up to it, they might be waking up. They might be a little bit more of that, again, reactive, that hypervigilant. So I personally, again, work with your veterinarian, but I like to also talk to people about sleep patterns. And just in the off chance, because most people don't want to stay up and record their dog the whole night, I'm one of them, I'd rather start to maybe get some melatonin on board to make sure that they're sleeping, because then I just rule out that puzzle piece that sleep is being, is happening. Deep sleep is happening, and deep sleep is actually where they can recover and reset, just like people. So if all the stress of the day has built up and they've had adrenaline and they had cortisol release and they've had all these reactions, they've been hypervigilant and aware, if we can take that edge off and help them relax, then they can recover and reset. And if they can recover and reset, then the next morning, just like us, we can get up for the day. And it makes that program that much more successful. So looking at, again, just the picture of, not just nutrition, but sleep patterns. Also, I believe in keeping journals. You're going to hear me talk about it probably a few times during this talk, but I like journaling. Record hey, roughly what time you go to bed, for a couple of weeks, your routines, your patterns, what they reacted to, maybe what some triggers are. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but also just, sleep patterns and, what we're doing to try to help that, because even before you set up a consult, like me, I'm booked out 2-3 weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks sometimes. So if you set up a consult, if I know when I talk to you, I'll usually say, can you keep a journal of some things? Well, now I know what you've already tried or what roughly that schedule is, because in my consult form, I do have what is your schedule? And so we can kind of pinpoint sometimes not only for training and foundation work, but also for observational sessions, for emotional sessions, and really help them get on a better schedule so that hopefully this whole program can work more effectively, much more quickly. Jay, I contacted vet behaviorist for help a few months ago after adopting my dog, and she told me it sounded like his issues were because he was recently neutered and still settling in, and didn't make an appointment. So I put things on my own: counter conditioning, desensitization, behavior modification. He's vastly improved. Excellent. But there's still things we need help with. I'd say we've gotten maybe from 85% reactive to 5% reactive, 5 to 10% reactive, or less, depending on several factors. Beautiful. Beautiful. Excellent job. So the fact too that, you kind of just took it a step further, maybe you do still need a behaviorist for that 5 to 10%. Maybe there's some tips and tricks that, we can help out with. I do worldwide consults as well. So I'm happy to talk with you even via Zoom or WhatsApp, things like that. And that offer stands to everybody. I do consults as well. And a lot of these dogs, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't always have to be done in person. Sometimes in person is far too more stressful for certain dogs. With COVID, we've all, most of us, we pretty much have all have learned to kind of do things via technology. And so a lot of us, I guess in many ways, myself included, because technology was not my thing, including now, again, bear with me. But we've all kind of had to step up our game, so to speak. And I've had success with many students now with just I have California students, I have kind of across the states here, and I have a couple of international students as well. I'm so blessed, to say that, but being able to have technology on board, we can definitely do some consulting and help that. So that's what technology is great and the internet is great for. All this free information, this conference too, I hope is helping you as well. So if you still need personalized stuff, I'm here, there's other professionals here, but awesome job, because if you've gotten it down that far already, keep going, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. I do want to point out there's never 100%. If you have a reactive dog, just like in people behavior or any species, there's no 100%. So your goal should never be 100%. It should be 90 to 95%. So that 5% will always kind of probably be there. You can play with it and hopefully get even to 98%. But my goal for all dogs is 90 to 95% goal, so that we still know how to deal with that 5% when it happens. So again, let's look at the sleep patterns. Let's look at the supplement therapies. You see if we need to make sure that they're sleeping at night. And then, then we can kind of move on and address the other things. And in kind of an additional, realization for, especially for these reactive cases, whether you're professional or student listening, cortisol release usually takes 36 to 48 hours, I believe 36 to 48 hours to get out of the system. So if you think about that, if every single day this dog is releasing adrenaline and cortisol, like an overboard, little minor amounts, it's not as big of a deal. Stress is every day, right, with all of us. But if they're constantly having these bursts numerous times a day, they're never getting out of it. That alone means that you're going to continue to see this behavior. So that's also why we address nutrition, sleep patterns, rule out medical, and then really help the dog and understand why the dog's doing these things, look at some of the triggers for these things, and then we can work on those triggers and really help the dog be successful. So again, really realize some of the background for some of the reasons these behaviors are occurring, not just as a mechanical sense, not just as leashes and collars. So after we kind of looked at some of that medical picture and addressed the routines, now I always talk to students about being able to get foundational cues. When I talk to people, there's 2 steps in getting this behavior change. We have to teach some foundational cues because in an emergency, we kind of need the dog to understand a little bit of language to be able to be successful. So in that reaction is not what we teach. We're going to be, and I'm not going to go into the finer details. There's tons of talks and tons of classes and things like that. If you want to set up personal, again, I'm here, but there's tons of foundational things. My top foundational cues that I teach my reaction dogs, or my dogs that are kind of getting explosive behaviors, is I really want to teach a good name recognition. You can also teach like a look or a focus if you want, but name recognition to me means if I say your name, you look at my eyes. And again, 90 to 95% of the time. So I'm not teaching an explosion and explosive events. I'm teaching foundation behaviors in the house, in the backyard, in the front yard, then on the driveway. I take it to the car. Then we might take it on a field trip. So maybe we're at the pet store, but we're in the field way over here, or we're in the way back of the parking lot. So that distance is our friend, but then we still work on just name recognition and eye contact. The way I teach my programs is I teach one concept at a time. Doesn't mean you can't do multiple concepts in a day, but I never put concepts together. So I focus on 2 to 3 minutes usually, or 3 to 5 minutes if I'm outside, on just one concept. So like eye contact, I'm going to get it. I'm going to guess, I'm going to pay. I'm going to move on to another spot. I'm going to get the eye contact, say the name, yes, and pay, move on to another spot. I have a 4-step program that I involve for that. And I really want to teach good, solid eye contact, not just in front, the left, the right, from if they're at the end of the leash, if they're close by, if they're sniffing the ground, then I can start testing it. But I really want to start teaching that first, because I really want to be able to get their head to turn if they hear their name. Again, my goal, 90 to 95% of the time. The next thing that I usually will teach is touch. I feel it's the most absolute best behavior that you can teach your dog, which is simply being able to have them bop their nose into the palm of your hand. So I hold a piece of food in my hand and their nose comes close and I go, touch, yes, release the treat, they get it. I use a lure in the beginning. Very quickly though, I'm just holding my hand out, holding my left hand out, holding my right hand out. I'm going high, I'm going low, and we're just doing 3 to 5 minutes of touch. And it's just a quick nose bop, touch and release. And it works as an emergency recall. It works as getting your dog to come all the way back to you if you need to. It also gets on getting them to turn around and focus on something else, not necessarily you, but just a quick habit forming, like, I gotta go hit her hand. Yes, and if you hit my hand, then we can head in the other direction. If I can get your name recognition first, then if you turn towards me, then I can say, let's go as well. So we want to get something to get the dog that they have a foundational habit. Again, not teaching during explosions, but have a habit of that. If I just say their name, they're going to automatically go, what? Because we've taught that so well in a habit that they're just going to automatically do it 90 to 95% of the time. That other 5 to 10% we can work with, because if I have to then say a cue a second time, I'm already within that percentage. If I have to say a cue, if I say 9 times out of 10, my cue works, and the one time it doesn't work, then I can quickly say a different cue and it's going to work just statistically. So we get really good solid foundational habits down so that if I need to say something else, I can, but hopefully I can get their attention away if I need to. So getting their name recognition, getting a good touch or a recall, come when called. Check it out is also a top one on my list. Check it out is permission to look. hugely important in my opinion. Give them permission to look at things and just not explode with them. So how I start that behavior is I literally start with just walking out my door, or even at the window if I have to. And I'm not looking for the person in the hat that makes them reactive. I'm looking for them to just go out in the yard, they go potty, and then they go and they look at the squirrel, or they look at the leaf that fell, or they look at, they listen to something down the road. And if they're not looking at me, literally, it just means don't look at me, but just, you can look at whatever else. If they're not looking at me, it's check it out. Yes. And I get paid, and then I move to a new spot. Usually they're coming with me, but then as soon as they get distracted and they look at something else again, check it out. Yes, they get paid. And I just do that so often and so much for all the random things that check it out means permission to look. And then usually, especially in my own dogs, a lot of people who know me have seen this with them. I'll say check it out when they're looking away, and they'll immediately turn to me and be like, oh, all right, I checked it out. I didn't do anything. What do I get for this? All right, now I know they're getting it. So now I know I have it a little bit more habit formed. So now it's check it out. Yes, they get paid. And that might be in the future, just check it out and not necessarily yesing and paying. But I don't believe you can yes your dog too often or too much. And I don't believe that you can yes too many good behaviors. It is the opposite of aversive training. I want the dog to know without a doubt what they're doing right. And in the beginning, they can do 5,000 things right. And it's amazing. And they're wonderful. And they're like, this is super easy. Exactly. Right now, it should be super easy. I actually don't care too much about sits and downs and stays. I laughingly say that most people who train with me, you focus a little bit more too much on that sometimes, because I really just like the relationship I have with my dogs. But being able to get those things are icing on the cake. I'm a competitor. I have to teach them for trials. Those are things that we have to teach. But in this particular case, a sit or a down isn't actually as necessary as just to look at you, to break contact and to come with you. So after check it out, usually I'll teach a good let's go. Let's go is not a formal heel. It's not even a walk nice. It's just simply a come follow me roughly in this area as fast as you can. Let's go, boom, and off we go. So again, we don't teach this when the dog is reacting. We want it in place when the dog is reacting. So we just start off with simply, if you're following me roughly in this little 1 foot ahead, 1 foot behind, 1 foot in the side radius, let's go. Yes. And you get paid. Let's go. Yes. You get paid. Suddenly I'll turn in the other direction and they won't even be on leash, like in my backyard. And I'll be like, bup, 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 and they're coming racing towards me fast. Let's go. Yes. Fast as they can come. That's what let's go means. That's what they get yes for. That's what they get paid for. So they start to learn that yes, let's go is a super happy, hyped up way of racing to you as fast as I can and catching up with you, because now it's a game. And then that habit starts forming, so that if I go check it out and they go, oh, I'm supposed to just look at this. Oh, what did you want me to do next? Let's go. Oh, okay. Follow you as fast as I can. Now I'm not dragging the dog, kicking and streaming. I'm not getting frustrated. I simply have some of this foundational stuff on board. I also like to teach a good leave it. Leave it. There's tons of ways of teaching leave it. I have instructional videos on that. It's a little bit more in depth because I do multiple games to teach this, but a good leave it, just in case they don't come on the let's go. Well, then I just need you to leave it and come with me. But those are the top things that I teach my reactive dogs first, so that we have some things in place when they do want to actually go ahead and get, reactive on things. There's no 100%, so they're going to make mistakes, just like you or I. So being able to get some foundational habits involved is no different than you learning self-defense, so that if somebody ever tries to hurt you, you know exactly what to do in that event, and they're not fumbling around trying to figure it out. So that's what foundational cues are meant to be put into place for. That's why I want to develop really good, solid habits for them as well. The rest of the, again, obedience cues, you cannot teach too many things. You cannot teach too many tricks. As we get better and better, all these other things come into place, but those are the things that I want to teach right away. And I want to teach them solidly. So it's not just at the house, in the backyard. We are going to go on field trips, but we're going to stay at a big enough distance that my dog's maybe not reacting. It might also mean you have to go to friends and family's houses where the dog's most comfortable. We do have to look at the dog's kind of emotional state when you do these things, because if they're, my dog is so distracted and he knows this, he doesn't know it. It's a hard conversation to sometimes have, but he doesn't actually know something if he's not doing it, at least 9 times out of 10. And so if I take a dog to 9 different environments and he's blowing me off, he does not know it. So, kind of really go back to that foundational stuff so that you can really help your dog. Oops, see another comment here. Oh, Valerie, thank you. Oh, thank you. Absolutely. I will help as many as I can. I always will do that. And Jay says, it's taken a year of 24/7 work, and I think the most progress, or at least the most noticeable results, have been in the past few months. Excellent. Engage, disengage game has been wonderful. Yep, that's kind of like my check it out and leave it. Yep. Engage, disengage. Look at that. It's safe to look at that and look at me. As wonderful as the scatter feeding as desensitization in a fun way without him knowing we're training. Exactly. We're going to talk about some scatter feeding and things like that in a minute, too, for enrichment. I have a whole talk on enrichment as well. But thank you. Good job. Very good job. Because those are all critical things to actually teach the dog that they're having fun. They trust you. They don't have to worry about so much stuff when they're with you. And that's big. That's critical. That's huge. So being able to kind of get those foundational cues, then we take them on the road and we can start to go in these environments where the dog may or may not have a reaction. I always say I try to go to areas where the dog's not going to have a reaction first as much as I can, but life happens, right? We can't predict life. It's never the situation, it's how you react to the situation, and this goes for you and your dog. So if you're getting into trouble, where the dog's reacting and you just have to kind of pull them away, do that. Keep safety in mind, get them away. But try to see if you can get some foundational cues habitual by going as many places as you can where the dog's not reacting so that they can learn in all these environments and start generalizing it, because dogs don't generalize well. We have to help them generalize this. If we go to all these different environments, then they start to learn that in all these different environments it's okay, because then they hit that adrenaline and they're going to be able to go back to that habit that you've taught. Another thing we really want to do is we want to look at kind of the other end of the leash, and just briefly to say, if you're frustrated, if you're anxious, if you're constantly seeking to look what your dog is going to do, that's traveling down the leash. It is absolutely true. Because if you're hypervigilant, they're going to pick up on, like, what are we hypervigilant about? What are they looking at? What is my mom looking at? What is she focusing on? Oh, there must be something to focus on out here. I knew we didn't want to be out here. I knew I didn't want to be out here. And I do that because that's literally, you can see your dog doing that. And if you're kind of going, what's going to happen next? They're kind of wondering, what's going to happen next? I knew it was bad to be out here. Well, I know it's hard, right? When you have a reaction dog, when you have an explosive dog, I've worked tens of thousands of dogs. I've seen a lot of explosive dogs where I've had to just take the leash too from the owners to say, hey, can I have the leash for a second? Let me show you how to do this differently. And a lot of comments are usually going to be like, whoa, he's reacting differently with you, because my adrenaline pump is off. I've done this so much. I mean, I do protection sports where dogs are biting and flailing in my face, and it's something where you have to, you learn how to do it, but it's going to take some time. At the same time, if you're frustrated or anxious, then don't go out and train. Train in an area where you know is going to be safer. Your home, your backyard, your front yard on leash. Put them on a drag line. Tie them to a tree so that you have that, but you can still play with them freely. All of these things are ideas for you to help your reactive dog so that you can formulate a little bit more of a plan, but ultimately you have to be able to trust your dog in order for your dog to trust you. So let's develop this relationship and do that. And if you're having a really hard time with that, just go to areas where aren't going to have some of these reactions, and really build that bond and really build that foundation in those areas. Especially to watch your vocabulary. Psychologically speaking, you might not be aware of it. And I did a whole, again, talk kind of on this as well, but psychologically speaking, you might not be aware of it. But if you're like, oh, he's just being stubborn, he knows this, or, he's being reactive, or she's rescued, so I know that she must have had a bad experience in the past. All of these things may or may not be true. And usually I try to say, throw out the adjectives attached, because you are psychologically setting yourself up for failure, because you're giving an excuse as to why they're doing it. Dogs do what works. That's why they're doing it. Regardless of what, adjective you put on it, unfortunately and fortunately, they only do what works. So let's make it stop working, and we don't have to be aversive about it. There is so many awesome things that you can do to help build their confidence in you that you don't have to be aversive about it. So let's help them. Let's understand them. Let's emotionally support them. Let's teach them what they need to be taught, and then we can actually get them out of it. So throw out some of the vocabulary too, where you have to go, and excuse them for behavior. I talk to my dog all the time. In fact, I talk a lot in public, and my dogs are kind of like, you're nuts, because they know that I'm not really talking to them, but I'm letting other people around me know what's going on. And I do that for a reason. I do that because I try to help them understand, maybe why I'm doing something or why I'm not doing something. Or hey, we're not going to say hi today, we're still in training, when I see that somebody really wants to pet my dog. Or they ask if they can pet my dog and they say no, and then they look kind of upset, oh, they're offended. I'm like, oh, because we need to train for public access and we don't need to do this. So, try to keep in mind what you say and how you say it, because people who see this dog reacting, you may not think of it oh, it's fine, but you, by actually becoming a little bit more of that higher pitched, happy-go-lucky person, might actually bring that down the leash to your dog to be like, oh, My mom's not worried. Because if you're like, oh, he doesn't like people in hats, and that's your voice, and the dog's like, oh yeah, I knew this person was bad, they're hearing kind of that. They're not necessarily understanding you. But if you're like, whoop, we're still in training, sorry about that, come on buddy, let's go, then your dog's not going to be as probably worried as much as they could be. I'm not going to say it's a magic wand, but the more habit you form at helping your dog and kind of getting into that energy level that they probably need, that diffusion of things, that, oh my gosh, he's reacting, but it's going to be okay. It is going to be okay. If you take precautions, nothing bad is actually going to happen. And I know it's a huge blanket statement, and I'm going to make it. If you take precautions, nothing bad is going to happen, so you can get out of a dangerous situation, or what you think is a dangerous situation. And we're going to talk about some of those other safety things to keep in mind first as well in just a second. But that's what I want to address too, is your end of the leash, because don't set yourself up for failure. Try to think of the things that you're doing. Journal. Again, keep a journal. Like, how many times did you actually yell at your dog? How many times did you say no to your dog? How many times did you say yes to your dog? If you say 3,000 yeses and 2 no's, amazing. Because I would love, to have like absolutely no, but I'm human too. I say no to my dog on occasion. I will admit that. That's just, it's life, right? We sometimes have to say no. Positive training isn't permissive. And sometimes I'll be like, nope, don't do that. And we redirect into something else. That's fine. But how many times are you actually saying no? If you're saying 3,000 no's and 2 yeses, there's a reason your dog isn't feeling validated or being able to communicate with you, because they don't understand. We want to set them up for success. But emotions do travel down that leash, and really try to think of like psychologically how you're feeling and what you're acting like, so that you can help them as well. They're gonna feed off of you a lot more than you think. Mistakes are gonna happen, so forgive yourself. Again, if we keep safety in mind and we really put these precautions on board that we're going to talk about, nothing really bad is going to happen. And if they react, nothing really bad is going to happen at that point either. So really look at, forgiving yourself, and realize that mistakes are going to happen, and there's no 100%. So just try to also have that foundation that you can be prepared for those mistakes too. Like, oh crap, they're reacting, let's get them out of the situation. And again, human examples for some of that being like, speeding tickets. You could say that I've never gotten a speeding ticket, and that's great, but have you ever sped? You don't have to answer that, of course, but does the threat of something stop you from doing it? That's why I kind of look at aversives the same way. The threat of something doesn't always stop a dog's behavior, but if I get really good foundational behavior, and if I got paid not to speed, most people would probably not speed. Or if I got paid to go to the doctor, most people go to the doctor more often. Instead, it's the reverse, right? It's a little bit more aversive for us. So we can do that for our dogs, though, where we can set them up for success and pay them for so many wonderful things, and that then when they have something that's kind of bad, they can work through it, tolerate it, and get away from it, and not worry about it. And that's what we're trying to do with kind of the reactive type dog. So the safety that I was talking about earlier, because behavior is fluid, and it's not something that is always necessarily predictable, right? Because the life is not predictable. There's going to be stuff that kind of happens. It's never the situation. It's how you react to the situation. So reactions from you or your dog are going to happen. Being safe about it is kind of what I'm looking for. So when I say keep safety in mind, and when I talk to my students about it, especially dogs that are reactive or lunging forward, the dogs that are reactive and backing away are probably not as much of a risk as long as they can get away. But the ones that are lunging forward, a little bit more risky, right? And again, I don't ever want to put safety of anybody else or you or the dog at risk. So I go, it's not foolproof, but I like to talk about basket muzzle training, especially for reactive type dogs. If you do it appropriately and you truly desensitize them to a basket muzzle, it is no different from them wearing a collar. My dogs shove their nose into their basket muzzles. They don't need them, but they do it anyway. I also train it in cooperative care. My talk on cooperative care discusses this in depth as well, so you can look for that one. But basket muzzle training really helps a dog to prevent liability. If you know that your dog can't actually puncture or lacerate, your psychological well-being is going to be a little bit more like, okay, we have a little bit more time, or we have a little bit more of a safety net here, so that I don't have to worry so much. If your dog doesn't have a muzzle on and is just free range, open, put an open mouth at somebody, that is a psychological thing right now that I bet you necessarily, maybe don't necessarily think about, but it's there in the back of your mind. My dog could cause damage. I could wind up in court. My insurance could get put away, whatever you're thinking, right? My dog could be euthanized, depending on your county and your laws involved. Nobody wants that. So basket muzzle training can be really effective for the reactive dog as well. And it takes away their option of biting, so they have to think about other things, but only if we do it right. I don't just shove it on their face and walk away. So really look into how to appropriately do that so that they love it. They can wear it anywhere in the house. They can wear it anywhere in the backyard. They can wear it anywhere in the car. They go to fun places. They go to grandma's with it on, and lots of cookies, lots of treats, lots of fun things. It comes on, it goes, goes on, it comes off, it goes on, it comes off. And then we take them out on the road with it so that they just go, all right, the basket muzzle's on, but it doesn't predict that we're going on a stressful walk. So those are things that we really want to look at. I also like to talk about people about having at least 2, if not 3 points of contact for their dog. 2 points of contact, meaning usually some sort of harness that has a front clip and a back clip. That's at least 2 points of contact for the dog. It really helps with some control. The third point of contact could be a collar, or sometimes people do like to use, especially with huge, massive breeds, and I work with sometimes owners who are not as huge or massive as their breed. And so we talk about head collars or something like of that nature, like a gentle leader or something like that, like an easy walker, halty. Those, again, appropriately desensitized in the short term might be something we look at, but in the long term, I'd rather flip the nose piece down and make it a regular collar so that then we just go back to the harness. You don't have to have and jump to all the equipment. Of course, I'm not an equipment trainer. I prefer not to have it, but being able to have 2 points of contact on your dog is going to be much more helpful as well. So, that's where we talk about harnesses and things like that. And people worry about leashes. Usually the 2 points of contact harness can be attached to a coupler, so it has both points of contact on a single leash. And then if you are having a third point of contact, you can either get a triple coupler if you want, or I usually say a second leash where you just have both in one hand. I show people how to just do things in one hand, so you still have another hand free for treat delivery or clicker training if you use that, or playing with a ball, being able to use that. Again, plus or minus if you're using the basket muzzle, of course. But those are some things to think about as well. That's how we help prevent and keep safety in mind as we're working with this reactive dog, so that you don't have this psychological going on. You have this, okay, I'm a little bit more safe about this. I have more control of my dog if they do react, and I know I can prevent them from going that full 6 feet or that full 10 feet or whatever is going to happen. Because you think about your leash might be 5 or 6 feet, but your dog's length of body, depending on where that leash is going to be an additional foot and a half, how big your dog is, etc. So you actually can have and if it's on a harness, even more. So keeping that mouth away from something else is what we want to consider too. And then looking at the environment. So, when we're doing desensitization programs, we look at the environment as a whole. And again, I want to start in non-threatening environments for the dogs so that they're comfortable, they can be successful. We've already put down our foundation training and we can build it up. So that might not be going to a pet store. It might actually be going to, if your dog is dog reactive, maybe you go to a pet friendly store. Around here, things like Joann Fabrics just has people. If your dog loves people but doesn't like dogs as much, going to someplace like Lowe's, Home Depot, Hobby Lobby, I guess, offers it as well. Joann Fabrics, some of those aren't going to have as many dogs, if any. And so you can check it out first. Make sure they're pet friendly, but a lot of these companies do have these policies now where you can bring your dog in with you. Well, if the dog is overall people friendly and just dog reactive, that might be a great place to start practicing cues. And heck, pick up something cute on the way. I like Joann Fabrics. I use snuffle mats and for enrichment. Absolutely love to go in and get a new fleece. So those are some things that we can talk about, when we talk about with clients about too, is we go to the opposite of where the dog's going to be stressed. If they are people stressed, then no, we're not going to go to a pet store or some of those stores. We might go instead to like a wider open park, or maybe down by the lake on a weekday evening where there's maybe is only 1 or 2 people to have to deal with versus 30 people to have to deal with. And we know we have distance that we can work with, and we have these foundational cues that we're going to practice in between those couple of people that may or may not come by, but we're at a safe enough distance where the dog's not going to react. You're at a safe enough distance with the reaction dog if they're not reacting. So if that means 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, you have to kind of figure that out with journaling and being able to practice. But when they're not reacting, when they're able to look at something but not explode, then we're at a safe enough distance that we can start working with them, because now we can teach them, they can learn. If they're reacting, they're over threshold and they can't actually learn. So that's not going to help us if they can't actually be open to that new knowledge that we need to teach them, right? That this is okay, because they're saying it's not okay. It's not okay. Well, let's go back further and more away, and then they go, oh, okay, they're far enough away. This is okay. What did you want me to do? I wanted you to look at me. Yes, here you go. Now we can go back to feeding or playing and things like that. So staying closer to home, and where they're not as hypervigilant and really stressed out, that they can focus a little bit more. They can do let's go. I go a few feet and then I stop and I do something else. I go a few feet and I stop and I do something else. And that's how we kind of work through that. And playing more enrichment games. So looking at the environment as a fun place to be. Jay, you kind of alluded to it earlier, right? You're playing more with your dog. Scatter feeding, enrichment games, safaris, those are all awesome things. Go somewhere and don't worry about walking. Go somewhere new and actually do where there's boiled bits of chicken and string cheese on this really clean grassy area. So I don't stick next to the sidewalk where everybody pees and poops. I maybe go into the park a little bit where we're at a distance from all these things, but I'll scatter lots of fun stuff, or we'll play with a squeaky toy, or play with a leather tug, or do a flirt pole. All of these things, again, kind of discuss in other talks, but a flirt pole for nice chase games is amazing for some of these dogs. They can focus then on biting and grabbing something and playing with something with you while this stuff is going around, and it starts to become background noise. The more it becomes background noise, the more fun the game is. Well, then I know I have my dog and I can get them to start playing with that maybe later for some of the obedience. I have a really nice link. I'll try to remember to post it on this one, but I posted it on one of my other ones. Of my dog actually doing obedience for a flirt pole. So like sits and downs and waits and stays and eye contact and, being able to drop it and things like that. So all these fun things you can do, you can say touch, yes. And then the flirt pole game comes out and then, all right, drop it again. All right, focus on me, check it out. Yes. Okay, there we go. Let's play this game again. Super easy things to do for a super awesome reward. Starts to get that environment looking really fun to that dog. I want to go on walks. I want to go out and do that. I never get to do the flirt pole at home. No, let's go ahead and take it on the road, but we'll do it at a safe enough distance that the dog can actually learn these new things around these distractions. You bring down their reactions by helping them see it in a different picture. We understand that they're stressed, but we can check it out to say, hey, come on back, and really reward them and get that energy out then in a good way. That explosion that kind of needs to happen then explodes onto a toy. And that toy then is with me, and let's play tug and let's get this out. I'm right here with you. This is a little stressful, but I'm right here with you. Let's play. All right, now we're going to drop it. We're going to breathe. You're going to check it out again. Back to me. Yes. Now we'll play again. That was perfect. That's what I wanted you to do. It's a nice bonding experience, but it creates trust and confidence in you. Your dog, if they feel that they're on their own, that's where you're seeing all this happen because they want things to go away. They don't trust that they can, they've got to feel like they got to take matters in their own paws. I want my dog to know that if you're worried about something, check in with me. Ask me what I want you to do. Because if it's really a bad situation, and I've been in a couple of those where my dog has actually saved my life, and if it's a bad situation, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say check it out. I'm not going to say quiet. I'm not going to say anything. You got it. You got the 42 scissor by sharp teeth if you need them. We're here. But usually then it's a bark or something else. But I don't need an explosion. I'm not talking about fear. I'm talking about actual threat versus non-threat. So if you build confidence, you get a dog that understands the difference and is not just reacting at everything, that only will then react at something that really is appropriate. And again, I do a protection sport, so I'm kind of a little bit more into that. Most companion dogs don't have to be, but really understanding why your dog's doing something. If they're fearful, they're not really protecting you. They're just trying to get something to go away. And if they're really confronted, they might not be as brave. So I want the dog to feel confident and just at least go, whatever, that's normal. Whatever, that's normal. Ooh, I'm not sure if that's normal or not. Yeah, okay, well, maybe it's not normal. Maybe we need to worry about someone breaking into the house. Hopefully not again. But I don't want the dog to have to always worry about things all the time. I want them to be confident and ask me, what's going to happen next. So identify triggers is kind of another thing that's important. Does your dog react to men, women, hats? Does your dog react to odor? That's something that's commonly missed, and I've indicated a few cases now, helped owners indicate a few cases now where it was odor, like cologne. Axe seems to be apparently a great cologne for men, and it's something that, yes, I've smelled it. Yes, it smells good, but some dogs really have triggered on it. And so something that, if it's overpowering to you, it might be really overpowering to your dog and just a very big dislike. So especially if you know that only when Bob comes over, my dog reacts. Well, maybe Bob's wearing something that the dog is just offended by. And it sounds weird, but sometimes it is as simple as that. And, if Bob stops wearing that cologne, the dog stops reacting. It could just be overpowering. Again, we desensitize, we can do something like that, but kind of look at some of the triggers, like what is actually your dog looking at and reacting to. Write them down. It isn't usually just completely random. There's usually something going on. So if we can pinpoint some of those things, you can actually desensitize them to it. We talked about distance, being able to have it where you don't overload, flood your dog, work at a bigger distance, help them out, understand that why they're reacting, how they're reacting. if they're reacting, then you're too close to that. They are a little overwhelmed by it. Help by bringing them away, getting them out of the situation. That way they can come back down and learn that it wasn't as bad. Once I get 20, 30, 40 feet away, we stop, but we also then turn back to whatever was bothering the dog. It's not that I go forward towards it, but I might, instead of keeping our back to it, where it might be still more scary if my back's to something that I was scared of, but I turn, I kind of like go either diagonal away so that they can still kind of see it and know it's not chasing them, or I go away and I just turn around and then we look at it again at 10 feet. Nope, my dog's still worried. Go back 20 feet. Oh, okay, my dog's not worried anymore. But we're looking at it. Now I can do check it out. Yes. All right, there we go. Check it out. Yes, there we go. If the dog's not reacting to it, that is a good check it out. If they're not taking food, that's okay. I do a technique called walking down the leash. Usually they're close enough, but if they're at the end of 6 feet, don't let them pull forward. Don't pull them back, but actually just go hand over hand until you get in front of them and be able to praise them, pet them, be there with them, help them. Touch, don't underestimate the value of touch. If your dog knows that you're there, if they're looking at something but kind of overly calm, what's the word? I'm not overly calm, but generally calm about it. Having touch, good. Check it out. Excellent. It is that contact that they need. They need to know that they're doing it okay. Far too commonly, again, we focus on knock it off, stop it, don't do that. And the dog's like going, gee, it was scary. And I thought it was scary. And now you're hurt, you're hurting my feelings even more, so to speak. You're not helping them by doing that. Instead, it's like, all right, check it out. Good. There you go. All right, check it out. All right, can you come with me now? Let's go. Okay, good boy. There we go. Or good girl. So now I've told them I'm with them. I'm here with them. I'm validating them. But you don't really need to worry about that. Come with me. Let's go. If you're too close, you can't do that, right? So get at a distance. Like, let's go. Come on. But then get them away. Help them come back to it and help them realize it wasn't as scary as they thought. That's where distance is your friend. And stop, let them look at it, readjust from it, and then go back further if you need to. Minimize those reactions by keeping that distance. When your dog's not reacting, you are far enough away. And then you can start decreasing the distance again. So when he's not reacting at 30 feet and he seems okay, let's go ahead and go 3 to 5 more feet forward. Okay, we're still good. Now check it out. Yes. And we're still eating and we're still, trying to play maybe. Great. Or I can still touch him. We go into 20 feet. Oh, we got a little bit more of a head raise. All right, come on back again. You're getting worried. Let's go back again. It's not a penalty as much as it is just helping them realize that it's not as bad as they think it is. And so let's help them with that. And that's going to take time and consistency, but things that you don't always think about is don't just run away from it because it was scary and then we ran away. If you have to do that, you have to do that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but then try in the future to run away from it, but then stop and relook at it and go, hey, this wasn't as bad actually. See, they're not chasing you. They're not running at you with a gun or a knife or anything scary. It actually is something that you have to just, not have to, but you want to look at. And if you look at it, it actually is more fun. You get rewarded for it. Again, where those check it outs and those foundations come in. So minimize those reactions by that distance, and find the motivators. The motivator for your dog might not actually be what you think it is. So yeah, a lot of dogs do like food. All dogs are food motivated. I have a whole talk on that for the non-food motivated dog. Eventually they're all food motivated, but toys. I work with a lot of odor loving dogs. So a lot of the hound dogs and things like that. I can bring with, and this is how I taught a recon one of my hound dogs. Only got a few minutes left, so I'll try to wrap it up a little bit here too. We're almost done. But the motivator was odor. So actually bringing vanilla, lavender, mint, and then we had birch, anise, clove, some of those basic like either nosework odors or just some of the essential oils that are not toxic. Be very clear. Make sure you talk about someone who's very skilled in it to make sure you're not doing anything toxic. But sometimes it simply is having little patchwork odors with you so that, check it out. Yes. And then, whoa, what is that lavender smell? Works as a calming oil too. Vanilla, nice warm oil, right? So, hey, check it out. Yes. And now they get to smell vanilla. What? Oh, that vanilla smells amazing. What do you have there? Oh my gosh. All right, well, let's go. Yes. Here, smell it again for a quick second. You don't shove it up their nose, but if you have a little container, if you do nose work, you can get a little tin container. You can put a little cotton ball with a drop on it. It is sometimes really effective to actually mix it up with not only just food, treats, toys, freedom, praise, but actually build in odors. So, with scent discriminatory dogs, like something that can be super easy is just showing them an odor where they're suddenly like, wait, what? You have birch with you? Why do you have birch with you? Especially if they do nose work. Hey, I found the birch. You are instilling just another habit. And you're rewarding them. So some dogs are just rewarded by smelling something different, right? Why do you think they use their noses a lot on walks? They take in their environment through their nose. So that can mean that we can use it as a reward too for some of the really good smelling stuff. And it could also start meaning that vanilla means chicken. I know it sounds weird, but if they smell vanilla and they start walking with you, it means chicken's coming. You actually can develop those associations. Toys. I like flirt poles. I like chase games if they can get some prey drive going, especially the dogs with prey drive. Tugging, being able to engage with me. Really work on those things at home so that you can start to take them on the road. Stressed dogs won't do that. No, but that's where contact can come in. But being able to have you praise, snuggle, being able to just, have them lean into you or you lean into them a little bit. If they lean back, that means they need you. Be there, be present for them, really help them. If you can learn to read behavior, that's a whole other topic, but really learn to read the behavior of your dog. Even that first initial ear prick forward is just attention to something. But then if they lower their head and they're fixating, or their hackles go up and they make themselves bigger, if you can learn to read some of those starting signs, then you can get them out of a situation before they explode. So that's another, again, are they really unhinged or are they just misunderstood? They probably do have a slew of things they're trying to tell you before they actually explode that we want you to just have a little bit more, be able to pick up on it. That's why that journal and picking up on these things is so important. If they don't do it in their front yard, that's fine. Record what they do. But then bring it on the road and then, hey, look, they went ahead and they started hackling first. Well, then maybe your dog hackles first. Maybe your dog does actually explode. Videos also really help. I like selfie videos. I tell people to take videos of behavior a lot so I can assess it, but those are going to really be helpful as well. And again, and being able to help know, does movement help your dog or not? Sometimes people want to be stationary and that helps them, but sometimes stationary actually makes it worse. And so we need to move them. Dogs are individuals, just like with us. So kind of, again, keep a little journal of like what's working and what's not working. And unless you video, sometimes you won't actually see the triggers. You won't actually see what's going on with your dog because you're not picking up the 5,000 things that happens. You're picking up the 4. And as behavioral professionals, I hope everybody would say this as well, but myself included, when I look at a video once, I'll maybe catch 15, 20 things, that maybe the client only caught 2 or 3. And then the second time I watch, I went, ooh, there's another 5, 10, 15 things there. There's a lot of things that we miss the first time around, but even if we're present. So video recording some things can really help you start to pick up on some of those little nuances that are happening and help you read your dog better. Desensitization, counter-conditioning, that's a huge topic in itself. That's really not, again, what I wanted this talk to be about was looking at some of these other things that were going on, but there's lots of ways to do that. And there's a lot of good talks actually in this conference on reactivity. So if you really want to look at the how-tos, look at some of those talks because a lot of people do have personal experience with their own dogs that they've talked about some of the how-tos that they've done. And again, I look at this big picture and then I develop the how-to. And if you want to do personal consult with me, I'm happy to do that. Life happens, as the final thought, life happens. The best we can do is prepare for it. We prepare for the worst in hopes that it never happens and that the best may happen instead. But take the time, the weeks, the months that it's going to take to change your dog, and you're actually going to see that then the lifelong habit is there. I'd rather take 6 to 12 months changing a dog so that then 10 plus years of lifelong habit and non-reaction is there. And that's usually what I try to set my students up as well for too. Plan for the weeks to months so that then you have the years of beautiful behavior that you want. It's going to take time and life is going to happen. There's going to be mistakes. Forgive yourself, but really just look at it this way. It's never the situation. It's how you react to the situation. And your dog's doing the same thing. So let's work together as a team to stop some of those reactions, or that if they do happen, we can get out of them quickly and life goes on. So hopefully you picked up some tidbits out of this talk. I think I'm actually a minute and a half over now. I apologize, but I'm going to get off. If you still have other questions, comment them. I'll read them. Message me if you want to do a consult. Happy to do a consult. Look for my other talks in the description. I have all of my talks and the links listed so that maybe there's something else that you can pick up out of them. But again, happy to talk with you more if you'd like. Hopefully you found this talk informative. Give it a thumbs up. Share it if you want. Invite your friends. Thank you for listening and being there. And hopefully, all of your dogs will be on the right path soon if they're not already. So as always, happy training. We'll talk to you later. Take care.